is growing concern over what President Donald Trump may do next to try to contest the November election results, so much so that all 10 living former U.S. Secretaries of Defense have published a joint op-ed in the Washington Post. They're warning Trump not to use the military to block the transfer of power to Joe Biden. The former secretaries include both Democrats and Republicans, and 2 who worked under Donald Trump. Among those who signed is former Defense Secretary and former Republican Senator Chuck Hagel. Hi, Secretary Hagel. Good to meet you, and thank you very much for making the time for our program tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
In everything I've read so far on this op-ed, I've seen the word unprecedented used, and that's obviously because of the nature of the op-ed and who signed it. Why did you want to put your name to it?
Well, I think the message in the op-ed that the 10 former living Secretaries of Defense sent was important, certainly for our military professionals in the Pentagon and around the world, but also for the people, the citizens of this country, to assure that they recognize the seriousness of peaceful transfer of power in a democracy. That's a cornerstone fundamental of democracy. And we just wanted to give support to our military leaders, who I have great confidence and trust in, but also it was a message to the American people.
Are you worried that that message is not being received, or that there is the possibility that it won't be?
Well, there's always that possibility when you have to deal with and take into consideration the very dangerously erratic and volatile decisions that this president has made over almost 4 years, especially the last 30 days since the election. The things that he said about imposing military law in our country to redo the elections, this dangerous talk about bringing in and enacting the Insurrection Act that would put our military in charge of the streets. I mean, that's very dangerous, loose talk that we've never had before. So I hope most Americans understand the seriousness of this. And if we could head any violence and problems off in helping head that off with an op-ed, we wanted to do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is the idea that all 10 of you getting together is addressing the possibility that is very serious, that it isn't just sort of Michael Flynn speculating and floating a couple of ideas, that it means more than that?
It does mean more than that, and especially when, as the news media has covered this, there was very considerable discussion about this in the Oval Office with the president himself. And again, we've got to educate our citizens, because the citizens of any democracy are in charge. I mean, everything starts with the citizen voting, who they send to their capitals to decide the future of a country. So they have great responsibility. Obviously, in conversations about imposing military law or enacting the Insurrection Act, the military is right in the middle of that. And we wanted to reinforce with the military that their obligations are to the country, to the Constitution. They swear an oath to the Constitution. They don't swear an oath to a president or a commander-in-chief or a political party.
And was there something specific was it that speculation, for example, or was there something else that triggered all of you getting together? Like, how did that unfold?
Well, I think surely what we've just discussed was part of the trigger, but also, as I mentioned earlier, over the last 30 days, this president has done nothing but daily incite demonstrations and violence, even to this day. He's saying, that he won the election. The election was fraudulent. The election results should be overturned. Tomorrow, the Congress of the United States is meeting to accept the certification of the electors of all 50 states that there was no fraud, there was no chicanery. Joe Biden won the election. But yet we've got Republicans tomorrow in the House and the Senate going to vote to overturn the certification of the electors. So this president continues to talk this way and continues to incite this. He's talking about demonstrations and protests in Washington tomorrow and around the country that could very well lead to violence. And that's dangerous.
Was there any debate, though, among those who signed the letter about how to present the position put forward? I ask because there is a person who just worked for the president, for example, among those who signed it, and people who work for presidents of different political persuasions.
Yes. No, at least as far as I know, there was no debate among the 10 of us. I'm sure some of us talked to each other, and But the consistency and the relevancy of the issue and the problem was very clear to all of us. But like you say, this is kind of remarkable in a way because we all come from different backgrounds. We have different political philosophies, work for Democrats, work for Republicans, both Democrats and Republicans on the letter. So this one thing focused all of us. And this is not a partisan issue. This is about a democracy. This is about rule of law, which this country has been about, peaceful transition of power.
You mentioned the pardon me, go ahead.
And that's for all citizens, all political parties. I don't care what you believe. I mean, we are a nation of laws, and we must maintain that.
You mentioned the certification tomorrow, and there is, a lot of conversation about the possibility of protests and the possibility, hopefully not, of course, of violence there or the type of protest that will erupt. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have concern about that as well?
Well, I do have concerns about it. Certainly, we don't want to overstate it. Hopefully, there will be no violence. But when this president continues to tweet out every day, continues to say things about turning out and show America that the election was fraudulent, that the election was stolen, and you need to support me, you need to overturn this, you need to change that, that's going to incite a lot of people. There'll be demonstrations and protests, probably in fairly significant numbers, certainly tomorrow in Washington and probably some other cities, and it could turn to violence. And we want to avert that. We want to stop that before it ever gets started. You
mentioned, though, in this is, I'd love to, if as a final question, get your thoughts on this. There are Republicans in Congress and in the Senate who are supporting the positions put forward by President Trump. You yourself, you've been a Republican senator. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm sorry about that. I really am. I understand political support for a president. In this case, the Republicans have consistently supported President Trump for 4 years. I understand that. But this is something different. What you're talking about now is overthrowing, decertifying a legally conducted election in this country for President of the United States that there has been no evidence, not a shred of evidence. Every court has thrown out every lawsuit that President Trump has brought before it, including the Supreme Court. No evidence to say that it was a fraudulent election, but yet some of these Republicans continue to support this president. That's dangerous. I'm sorry they're doing it. I think it's very irresponsible. I hope we can get through tomorrow in the next couple of weeks before January 20th, before the swearing in of a new president, without the problems. But what we see could happen. But what these Republicans are doing is they are guilty also of inciting this craziness. I mean, it's not going to go anywhere, of course, but it just prolongs everything, and it undermines confidence that the American people have in the system, in their country, in their electoral process. And when you undermine systems and you have a lack of trust and confidence in your institutions of governance, that's a big problem for a society, any society.
Okay, I'll leave it on that note. Thank you so much, Secretary Hagel. Pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.